Amidst all the rivalry fervor out there, it is BYU basketball season as well, everybody. Now, it starts tomorrow as BYU takes on the Nebraska Cornhuskers in their first of two exhibition games. We'll see what Kevin Young's got in store for us, but I will just say this. Let the AJ mania begin.
You are Locked On Cougars, your daily podcast on the BYU Cougars. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? Welcome into Locked On Cougars, your daily podcast focused on the BYU Cougars. I'm Jake Hatch, your executive producer at KSL Sports Zone in Salt Lake City, Utah, and a 14-year credentialed media member at BYU. I am your resident expert and insider right here on your original daily podcast focused on all things BYU. And of course, thank you for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. Special edition here as BYU basketball gets ready to informally start the 2025-2026 campaign with the first of two exhibition games. These used to be the secret scrimmages that we couldn't, report on or couldn't attend. Now they are a mechanism that can make money for these universities and obviously be dedicated to charitable causes and the like. And Kevin Young and company, they're not taking it easy with these exhibitions. They are taking on the Nebraska Cornhuskers, a fellow Power 5 program from the Big Ten. And I think the biggest thing I'm looking forward to is they square off at noon Central. That's 11 a.m. Mountain Time. Is that I'm looking forward just to seeing what BYU looks like going up against another team. We have heard a lot about Richie Saunders. You've heard a ton about Debonsa. You just have to go and look at that Slam magazine cover and what he was talking about in that article that literally came out earlier this week to get a sense of all the fervor around BYU basketball. I know we've been talking almost nonstop about BYU football this week with the rivalry game, but this BYU basketball team holds a whole lot of intrigue, and I'm looking forward to seeing what it looks like just against another team. I want to see what Debonsa looks like against a fellow Power 5 program, albeit one, speaking of Nebraska, that's been tabbed near the bottom of the Big Ten Conference. This is a program led by Fred Hoiberg that is a little bit in rebuild mode. They're trying to find their way. They've added some talent, but I don't think you're necessarily going to get a real feel for probably either one of these teams' ultimate look and what the rotations will be. But it is basketball season, and it's the first chance to see Debonsa go up against another team. It's our first opportunity to see Richie Saunders in action. I do not know, as of recording of this podcast, if guys like Robert Wright III or Dawson Baker or Brody Kozlowski, who were held out of the annual blue and white scrimmage last week, will play in this game. We'll find out, obviously, in the lead up to this game tomorrow morning. But the bigger point here is it's our first look at what to expect, maybe in small doses, of what Kevin Young has planned for this basketball program. I'm looking forward to it. I've said it on the podcast, if you're an everydayer, and I hope you guys are, is that I don't want to wish away the BYU football season because college football is my baby. It's my favorite sport by far. But the way and the feeling of this BYU basketball team has me absolutely intrigued as to what they're ultimately going to morph into. AJ said it himself. He said the ground for the ground floor, or I guess I should say just the floor for BYU this year in his mind is the Sweet 16. It's pretty lofty expectation to have that being the floor for success, but I think that shows you kind of the mindset of this BYU basketball program. They are absolutely intent on making an impression across the country, if not inside the Big 12 at minimum, and it's going to be led by Debonsa and Richie Saunders. They're going to be the tandem that makes everything else for BYU go in this game, and in this season, I probably should add on that. And I'm looking forward to seeing how they look in this matchup. Those two obviously teaming up with guys like Keba Keita, Kennard Davis Jr., we'll just see what it looks like. That's the first thing I want to look at from this game. The second thing is what other rotations will Kevin Young use in this game? Will he play a true 5-out alignment where you don't have a big man in the middle? Everybody's on the perimeter trying to make for one another, cutting off stuff and cutting off one another and trying to find ways to attack teams that way. How good will the three-point shooting look early on? Those are all questions I think will be answered in some small part in this game. And I, for one, am looking forward to just getting a glimpse of what we can observe from BYU basketball. And we will do a postcast. I'll break it down after that game goes final. It's on Big Ten Plus. So you have to stream it. That's the only way to watch this game. It's a streaming platform, obviously part of the Big Ten network. But if you get on and sign up, you may have an opportunity to watch this team in action. And there's other opportunities to do it. I know that there are going to be probably watch parties involving this, but I'm looking forward to seeing how BYU basketball looks. The other thing is that BYU has been tabbed as the number 2 team in the preseason poll from the Big 12 Conference. Now, some of you may be questioning, well, why are they second? Well, until Houston is knocked off, there's no reason to pick anybody other than the Houston Cougars to lead this league. Ever since Houston joined the Big 12 Conference, they've essentially run the league. And we're talking about a conference that has the likes of Kansas, Iowa State in it, but they have a Baylor. They have not been able to hang with the Houston Cougars, and that's why of the 16 first place votes, the Houston Cougars have 14 of them. I believe the rules prohibit coaches for voting for their own team, and BYU and Arizona garnered the other 2 first place votes. And I've got a sneaking suspicion if it wasn't Kelvin Sampson picking BYU with his first place vote, it's probably Bill Self from Kansas, because Bill's been very, very adamant in his praise of what BYU has built basketball-wise. So I think BYU being tabbed second in the league, it's not a bad place to be, because if you finish second in the Big 12 Conference, you're probably going to find yourself with, at worst, maybe a 2 seed in the NCAA tournament. That's how good you're going to have to be to rise near the top of this league, if not challenge for outright conference superiority against the Houston Cougars. The other thing is, we already talked about the 2 guys leading BYU this season. Speaking of AJ Debonsa and Richie Saunders, they were named to the All Big 12 preseason team. And if they hadn't been, I'd have been floored. It's kind of the antithesis of what we saw from BYU football. Remember, in the preseason All Big 12 teams, there were no first-team honorees. In fact, Jack Kelly and Isaiah Glasker, who I think pound for pound are BYU's best football players, they were nowhere to be found on the preseason All Big 12 teams in football. Absolutely incredible that they got snubbed in that regard, but it's good to see BYU basketball getting some pub with Richie and AJ being tabbed as all Big 12 type talents. And AJ, for example, was a unanimous selection. That means that the people out there who are voting on this absolutely believe that he is everything he's cracked up to be. And BYU needs him to be just that if they want to accomplish the goals he himself has stated on the record. Like I said, the floor is the Sweet 16. He wants nothing more than to be a legend at BYU, even though it's probably going to be just one season, barring something completely unforeseen, with him as a member of the BYU Cougars. But he's embraced BYU, speaking of AJ. He has come in. He's spoken very highly of what BYU has offered him. If you read that Slam magazine article, BYU apparently wasn't the highest offer in terms of NIL. I'm sure it was a competitive offer, because that's very clear. We have BYU boosters running around saying that we won't be outbid, speaking of BYU. But the nice part is, it seems like AJ's got more than just money on his mind. He's got legacy on his mind. He's got development in terms of his next step as a professional basketball player. And he believes wholeheartedly in what Kevin Young has already established in Provo, Utah. It's a little bit of a leap of faith for him, I'm sure, coming to Provo and obviously playing at Utah Prep Academy and getting a feel for what it's going to be like to play at a university that he's not a member of the predominant faith of. Speaking of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, the sponsoring institution of Brigham Young University. The nice part about AJ is it appears that he wants a distraction-free opportunity to go out there, work on his game, and hopefully along the way lead BYU to some pretty high heights. And the nice part is he's got an incredible running mate. He was a all Big 12 honoree this past year, the most improved player in the Big 12 Conference, speaking of Richie Saunders, to play off one another. I could easily see a scenario where these 2 guys trade off every night being the leading scorer for BYU, or have the one night one has a huge statistical line, the other one may have a little quieter, but it's essentially pick your poison for Big 12 teams, because I don't believe many teams out there, if any, have 2 what you would call defensive stoppers capable of lining up and slowing down AJ and Richie simultaneously. That is a major weapon for BYU to have in their back pocket. And that's why those 2 are on the all preseason Big 12 team. It's an awesome honor to see them both there. And we get our first real glimpse of what to expect from them coming up in this game against Nebraska. Who knows what it's going to hold? Who knows if BYU is going to win, if they're going to run it away in a romp, or if they're going to find themselves in quite the battle. We just saw, it was the other night, I think it was Baylor. No, it wasn't Baylor. It was Oklahoma State and Auburn. They tussled. It was like a 3-point game, like in the 90s. It was like, okay, we got some juice going on here with these exhibition games. And obviously BYU's ramping it up from Nebraska tomorrow to next Friday, when North Carolina, yes, the vaunted North Carolina Tar Heels, the legendary program that is, they're coming to Utah. It's not being played in Provo, but it's being played at the Delta Center. There's a whole lot of excitement around BYU basketball, and for good reason. And our first real look at it comes tomorrow, as we see if the Cougars show us a little bit more of what to expect from this team, if not all of it, and quite honestly, get things going here, and we'll get a glimpse of hopefully a really, really fun team and season ahead for the BYU men's basketball program. So there you go. A couple of thoughts real quick on BYU basketball. Like I said, I'll do a postcast after that game goes final. We'll also have plenty of coverage in the lead up to BYU football taking on the University of Utah as we have all week long. And as always, truthfully, thank you for your support of the podcast. Want to thank all of you who continue to subscribe, rate, and review, be everydayers here on the show. And until tomorrow in the rivalry game, along with some BYU basketball, this has been the Locked On Cougars podcast.